Hello and welcome to another illustrious occasion with yours truly. My name is Blitzvogel, and I think I remember saying in one of the previous RX 550 test videos that I wasn't going to bother testing Battlefield 1, primarily because of how much the game hates dual-core processors, which is what this RX 550 is paired up with in my wife's computer. Well, I decided to go through the trouble of installing it to my machine with its quad-core i5 4690K processor, therefore avoiding all the dual-core issues. We get a pretty good understanding as to what this Radeon RX 550 is all about when it comes to your Battlefield 1 multiplayer experience. Unfortunately, I did run into some issues getting MSI Afterburner to play nice on my machine. Even the latest version was refusing to run the on-screen display concurrently with any game. I'm not sure why. It might be a Radeon driver related issue, so instead of all the fancy telemetry I usually have, all we'll have on screen is just the FRAP's frame rate counter, which is still enough to give us a clear picture into how the RX 550 performs. So let's jump into this. First, we need to acknowledge that frame rate is very much tied to your enjoyment of BF1's multiplayer. It's not simply about smooth frame rate and frame delivery, but it severely impacts mouse latency, or at least feels that way to me. The difference between 45 and 60 FPS is staggering, and personally has a huge effect on how well I play. It's as if the mouse latency is specifically tied to frame delivery. In concert with this, DirectX 12 mode still has a huge latency penalty, in my case, making multiplayer simply unplayable. DX11 is the only way to go, not that this is a real loss for the RX 550. While definitely more capable than the 7750 it replaced, the RX 550 doesn't have what I consider a worthwhile improvement over that older GPU. It has enough performance to deliver 60 FPS like frame rates at 1080p when using lower settings, and if you're comfortable with 40 FPS, then medium settings with TAA and even HBAO is possible on some maps like Sinai. In more geometrically complex maps like Amiens, it becomes necessary to disable the TAA and HBAO, and by virtue a decrease in render resolution becomes almost required in delivering the smooth gameplay and latency I mentioned earlier, especially since Amiens is so focused on close quarters combat. Honestly, lower settings personally isn't that bothersome to me, sans geometry options that produce some very jarring level of detail transitions and object pop-in. Because of that, I tend to leave those related settings at about medium. But going below 1080p really starts to hit home that Battlefield 1 wasn't made for the RX 550. You almost have to tailor BF1's graphics settings on a per map basis, since they each vary so much in performance, an issue that would be mitigated by a more powerful graphics solution. I would have no qualm telling an RX 550 owner that Battlefield 1 could be played and enjoyed on this graphics card, but I certainly wouldn't endorse purchasing an RX 550 for Battlefield 1 if you get my drift. Eventually, I'll get around to trying out the single player on this RX 550, where I think it'll be much more at home. So look forward to that coming soon. Until then, be sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching.